Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on page 199 or so, talking about this one particular example and how hyperlinks are done. So a hyperlink is just a tag. It's just text. I go in here with an A. I tell it where I want my web page to go, and then that's about it. So that if somebody clicks on this, it would go do some magic. Okay. HTML5 came out in 2014 with lots of big fanfare. It was supposed to unify the web and solve all the problems. Okay. It did help an awful lot. Almost all browsers now are HTML5 compliant, and if you're using one that isn't, then you probably need to find another browser. The idea is that some of the tags we would put in here demanded that you have a certain application installed on your machine. So for example, if I put a particular video tag or an audio tag inside here, it kind of sort of meant you needed to have that particular application installed on your computer. Because remember, this layer 5 can talk directly to the rest of your computer, right? So if I want to play an audio file, so since there was so many different types of computers that operating systems and audio applications and all that, what web developers would do is they'd put, like, they have a sound clip, they put it like in 4 different places. You know, one for Internet Explorer, one for Opera, one for, just go down the list, one for Mac, and it was a royal pain in the ass, to tell you the truth. So what HTML5 did, it basically said, we're going to have a single way of doing audio and video and all the rest of the stuff. So we web developers went, whew, thank you, because that was a pain. Now, did it make any other real substantial changes? Not for this discussion. If this was a web development course, we might go in a little bit more detail. Here's what you really need to know about HTML. HTML is a text-based markup language, okay? It is not a programming language. Programming languages are going to have, like, assigning variables and loops and if statements and all the rest of that stuff. That is not what goes on here. This is marking up text. That's about it, okay? So, you may have heard, well, that's an HTML5 application. And quite frankly, I wish they would just quit saying that, because it confuses people. No, HTML5 is not a programming language, and no, programs are not written using the HTML5. What they're saying, if you read between the lines, is the application is written probably in JavaScript or some sort of other scripting language, and then the results are presented to the user via HTML5. Okay, wow. So, yes, significant distinction there. HTML5 is not a programming language. Okay, so next let's talk about the HTTP. We kind of talked about, so all this stuff happens on the server, right? Some guy sits down and marks up some text and puts it on a web server. So now the question is, how the heck do I get this on my machine? So that's what the Hypertext Transport Protocol is all about. So on page 202. So this is actually one of the least complicated protocols out there. If you were actually to study all the protocols that exist in the TCP/IP stack and all, that top layer, this one's actually pretty simple. It only has like 3 or 4 commands. That's about it. I mean, it's not much to this. It's all text-based. Kind of weird. So here's what happens. I send a get command to a particular website saying, fetch me this page. Okay, I know the URL. So fetch me this page. What happens is I get a status reply back that says, thank you for your request. Looks like we have that. And then attached to my request packet is the payload. And the payload is, whatever, like this. That would be the payload that you're looking at now. So I ask for a page. It sends me a status back saying got it, or perhaps ain't got it. And if it's a got it, then it'll say attached is. Sort of like an attachment to an email. Yes, thank you for your request. Everything turned out okay. The thing you're asking for is in the attachment. Okay. There's some examples in the book, and I'm going to use one that's slightly different. I'm going to actually show you some live stuff. Okay. So I'll go back to this guy. And if you ever played with Internet Explorer, I'm going to hit the F12 button. And the F12 button is going to pop up this cool little debugger. Okay. Oh, this is a good example. This is a good example right here of why HTML5 is a good idea. Here's what you used to have to do. You used to have to go in here and use script elements and say, well, if you're using Internet Explorer that's less than version 7, go do this. If they're using Internet version 7, do that. If it's using version 8, do that. If it's using greater than 8, do that. What a royal pain. Okay, that really wasn't what I was trying to show you. What I was trying to show you is some of the details of, I'm gonna just refresh this page to show you what it looks like. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me do that again. Okay. So I'm going to stretch this guy out to show you a heck of a lot more what's going on. So what I did is I asked for a particular page using the HTTPS protocol. I wasn't paying attention to that. Asking for a get method. So get is one of the verbs you can ask for. And I got a 200 back, which means it's okay. Which meant I'm just going to go ahead and click into this guy because there's a way you can actually look at the actual stuff that you got. Whoop, that wasn't what I wanted. Let's go back. Okay. Okay, well, how about this image? Okay, here's a good one. All right, so here's my request. I said, hey, get me this. So something, it says got, and here's what I will accept. I will accept. In other words, I'm asking you for a file, and by the way, here's the things that I can read. I can read, since I'm asking you for a graphic file, I can read an image type of PNG, SVG, all sorts of other image types. And then what language I'm expecting to get, a little bit about my own browser, because again, perhaps you needed to know what kind of browser I had so you could figure out what to do. What type of encoding? I could accept this being zipped together. And then some other interesting stuff. And so here's the request header, and here's the response. The response was, thank you, I got it, everything worked out. I'm going to send you this PNG. Here's how big it is, and here's the actual, okay, well I guess not, sorry, the response body. So here is the actual graphic that I was supposed to get. You know, it's a lossless crop, blah, 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 blah. It's a type, it's size, and all the rest of these things. And so it actually shows you a picture. So that's how it went. I asked for something and told it a little bit about myself. It came back and said, thank you for your request. I found what you're after, and here it is. So that's the way the web works. It's not really all that complicated, to tell you the truth. Now, going back to here to the summary, here's all these get methods. Well, there is another one. There's another one called post, where I can send data up. Now, to tell you the truth, that's not all that common. I mean, yeah, you're on Facebook and you're trying to upload some photographs, okay? But outside of things like that, the vast majority of web traffic is kind of read-only, right? I mean, you're just pulling data from a web page. Maybe you're like buying something and you fill out a form and hit a couple of buttons, but that's not all that I mean, it happens a lot, but the vast majority of the traffic is just stuff coming to you. Very little traffic going back up. And in fact, in this case, there's nothing going back up. I mean, I'm not entering any data or buying something on this website. So all of my method types are all the same. They're all gets. Okay. So on page 208, they ask some dumb questions about like, well, what is a browser? Is a browser an HTTP? Well, HTTP is the protocol that the browser has to use. So let's say I wanted to write a browser. Okay, I'm tired of using Internet Explorer or Opera Edge or whatever, and I want to write my own from scratch. You could do that. All you need to do is to make a connection using HTTP, which quite frankly isn't that tough. Send requests, interpret what they come back, and then render the page with the markup. Because that's what web pages do. Web pages take that section that said angle bracket B, lamb, and under another angle bracket B to make turn. It takes that and then physically makes the word lamb bold on the screen. So it renders the page. That's the tough part, that rendering part. Plus, there's lots of other technologies it has to have, and we need some JavaScript running. We need all sorts of other things. So the browser is a heck of a lot more than just transport and HTML. It's a lot more than that. Okay, let's continue. So let's talk about the URL, the thing you type up here. In this case, it's HTTPS, and we'll get to that part. And then some sort of a thing and blah, blah, blah with a bunch of slashes and stuff. So there's a particular one I want you to bring to. This is the example in the book is not really sufficient, so I'm holding you to a higher standard. So I want you to look at what I consider to be what a typical URL looks like. So here's what I think a typical URL looks like. The first part is the protocol. Now, most of the time it's going to be HTTP. Sometimes it's going to be HTTPS. Maybe it'll be mail to. Have you ever seen one of those? Mail to : or FTP : or something like that. Okay. So I'll admit the vast majority of them are going to be HTTP. But yes, there are more protocols out there than just HTTP. The next one is this chunk here of where their domain name is. So in this case, their domain name is google.co.uk. That's their domain name, or parts of their domain name. Now, this one I have some trouble with, and I'm gonna make some changes. Most of the time, this part after the slash is like www. By the way, that's just a convention, right? You don't have to have a www in there, okay? When I was developing my web page, they said, do you want to have a www? And I said, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. So mine works with or without a www. It's completely optional. Okay. But back in the day when this was built, this was the name of the machine name. So if you had a server number 42 sitting over in the corner, this would have been http://server42.kumquat.com. Now, a lot of people immediately thought that was a bad idea because I don't want to give you a lot of information like the physical names of my servers inside my business. I don't really want to do that. And so they created an alias so you didn't have to expose to the outside world what your real machine name was. So www is completely arbitrary. It's really just an alias. I mean, you could say server number 42, but nobody does that. Now, if you leave off the www and don't have anything at all, most of the time the server can figure it out. So yes, it's the host name, the machine name, and the alias, and it's kind of sort of optional. Now, let me get past that. A port number. Remember we talked about UDP and the port number, and port number 80 was the one for going to a web server. Well, it could be that I don't want to use port 80. So I could type on the command line, I could type, http://www.kumquat.com:42. And that'll push this over port 42. And then some sort of a path. It's like a directory structure. It doesn't actually have to physically match the directory structure on the machine, but that's okay. And then you could have all sorts of things like queries, where if you ever filled out a form and hit a button, or you've done a search like on Google, it uses a little question mark and then these little doodads in here. And then perhaps there's a thing in here where inside my web page I have bookmarks inside my web page. So we're not talking about going to another web page. We're talking about going to another location inside the same page, and that's called a fragment. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.